Hello, everyone, and welcome to the FVP UKM podcast. This podcast is part of FVP UKM's ongoing effort to provide clear, accessible public education on financial technology, blockchain, and digital transformation, especially for students and in wider community. And today's episode focuses on crypto literacy, digital asset security, and why education matters more than hype in blockchain adoption. And we will explore why many users still struggle with basic concepts like private keys, self custody, and what students should understand before engaging with digital assets, and how educational tools can help reduce real world risk. And we are very pleased to welcome our guest today. Joining us is Mr. Kerry Washington, founder and CEO of Ground Software and the creator of Brainwallet. So, Brainwallet is a gamified educational platform focused on crypto literacy and key management. Before founding Ground Software, Mr. Kerry spent several years working with global communities and advocating for user education at the Litecoin Foundation. So, Pak Kerry, welcome to FVP UKM and thank you for joining our podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm really thrilled to be here. From being a kind of a stalker to see your podcast and seeing what you're talking about, and it's the right hymn, so to speak, to really educate people. So thanks for having me.
Thank you. So to begin with, could you share your journey from working at the Litecoin Foundation, working with Charlie, to founding Ground Software?
Sure. I spent 20 years in Silicon Valley. At the time, for an iOS developer, so I went from startup, Apple, iOS developer, very lucrative role. But the problem is, every few months or so, the startup fails. So you're in this cycle of looking for new work, and I figured out that if I could just keep working on projects, that makes me feel better. And it's one day, a friend of mine said, like, "Hey, this guy wants you to do an iOS app, but he wants to pay you in Bitcoin." And at the time, I was like, "Okay, but I need to pay bills, so I guess I'll do that." So it was great for a few months, and I really started educating myself about different cryptocurrencies, Ethereum, Cardano, and Litecoin. Litecoin at the time was about $4. And I saw that they had a open source wallet, SPV wallet, which basically means it's meant for on your mobile phone versus something in a powerful computer. And it's open source, and it was having, I think it had like 2 stars or something. And it was like, I can definitely help. So I reached out, and lo and behold, Charlie and I were the only ones in Silicon Valley in the foundation. And I said, "Hey, can I work?" And I've got a picture of me meeting him. He was talking on Stanford campus, right? And it just works out that because we were near each other, every month or so for about 3 years, we'd have lunch, right? He paid. but basically, it was great because Charlie's a very stoic type of person. He just thinks about decision making, and he's never been, the thing I really admired about him is he always wanted to kind of educate and help people, right? Even, he was a Bitcoin guy first, and he launched Litecoin fairly, so that there was no treasury or anything like that. So you can understand his value system is really good. So I was lucky. I got, for 3 years, I kind of had him to myself, and used his knowledge, and we strategized. And so in between jobs and everything, I was a volunteer in the Litecoin Foundation. And after a couple of years, like, we started kind of hitting a signal, as we like to say in the business, where you're like, something started working better, right? We sometimes the price of Litecoin would go up, and our user base would go up, but eventually we fixed enough bugs and everything, and people were starting to want to join the team, right?
Mm-hmm.
So instead of just me and like one other guy, it turns out before you knew, it was like 3, then 4, and I didn't really care where they lived, right? So one of the guys, he was in Morocco, another guy in New York, and so they kind of educated me on how to build the team, because there was no way we were going to have a building, right? We had to have remote work, and core to our values system was, hey, this is a nonprofit app that we want people to use Litecoin, and we're going to teach them how to do it, right? So that was always the case. Just make sure I'm not going off tangents here, but basically I did that for 3 years. COVID hit, and I actually moved to London, and I was working remote with my regular 9-to-5 job, but at the time, Litewallet, which was the wallet that we were building, was like catching steam, right? So we had a good team. We had a global team, and we were paying them all in Litecoin, right?
Oh.
Yeah, because they were kind of volunteer, paid volunteers, right? So it's like, I don't know if you knew my background, but I'm an ex-Army officer, so I'm kind of used to the structure and how things are supposed to work. And so when you never see someone and you can't really you don't have a paycheck it's a very ethereal kind of way of managing people. It's very difficult. But the point is, I was in London, and basically Litewallet started doing pretty well, but like obviously Silicon Valley folks don't want to pay for someone that's in London. So I just made that my full-time thing. And, the foundation started paying me a little bit. It's still nothing like Silicon Valley. But because we had basically tweaked the formula such that we were able to get people, we were doing more social media. It was not the best, but we were doing it, right? So, Twitter, a little bit of LinkedIn, a little bit of Instagram, and we really didn't know what we were doing. We were just doing it, but we did one thing, which was the foundation basically was paying for all the bills. And what had happened is because our numbers were growing, I couldn't go to them and say like, "Oh, can you give me Litecoin to go pay for Slack?" we want to use Webflow. How do you do this, or Zendesk? And eventually what was happening is like I had a regular operational requirements for Litewallet that were actually growing, right? And I that's when I founded Grunt Software. I was I need to actually have a business here in England so that I can actually pay bills and all that stuff. And at the time, on the back burner, I knew the idea of Brainwallet, but I was like, things were doing really well. Like last year of Litewallet, we had a 40% growth, right? And the year before it was like 11% growth. So we were doing so well, and I basically had Grunt Software doing all the traditional finance, and it was good. But the problem was a lot of people were kind of like, "Oh, this is a nonprofit wallet." And one of the tweaks was we charge people fees up front to do the send, right? So I proposed like, hey, why don't we swap it and make it a commercial wallet? And they really wanted to keep it like a nonprofit type of entity. And so I actually spun off using the same code. That's the thing. It's open source. The wallet code has been forked, I want to like 14, 15 times. Like people would always come to me and say like, "Oh, I have the fork, and how do I do this thing?" And so basically Brainwallet uses the same wallet code. The front end and a lot of the features are different, right? But we really started with the same thing. And the idea is the pain that we had with the Litecoin Foundation and Litewallet was after those 7 years, people would still come to us and be like, hey, give me my 12 words. I lost them. You took my Litecoin. Please give it back. And we're like, we definitely don't have it, right? The notion that we're keeping your keys safe for you is a fundamental human natural thing for people to think, but that's our whole that's our trust bond with the user, and they still didn't understand it, right? And so we had a couple of power users that were like memorizing their seed phrase because they were really, really good, Q&A people. I said, hey, why don't we make a game out of it? But instead of words, right, we can use emojis, right? And so if you're a math guy, so you understand that there's 2,000 bit 39 words. I did my research. There's about 5,000 emoji combinations, right? So 12 bit 39 words that could be up to 2,000. I mean, it's like a 5.4 gazillion number of the combinations for that. Yes. So if you add to that emojis, it's even more complex, right? And then meaning is completely subjective, right? So I said, okay, some really diehards will be like, oh, this is, there's leaky. I'm like, I've seen people give us their seed words. I want to start with something. let me give them a tool that they can relate to, right? And so we started with a demo a few years ago, but in February we basically we did a launch of the product, which is just one step above Litewallet. So it has wallet functions, but a lot of the features that like I always wanted to fix, I'm like, oh, it's commercial now, and it's ours. We're going to fix all this stuff, and we're on the edge of doing our first game. And we actually went to a couple of campuses. We went to UGM last week, and we went to Amicom, which is down the street. We showed some previews of the games, and the idea is like everyone loves games, and the more simple and the more sticky they are, the better. And just making sure that we obfuscate the mechanics of the game away from the user, so that they retain that privacy of what they actually choose, right? But I'm not that worried about that because I feel like this is a great starting point.
Okay, so what then? I was just curious. What experience along the way that motivate you to focus so strongly on user education? Was it because of the previous experience, people complaining about lost Litecoin?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I've done a couple of these kind of chats, not like this. This is very special, but I've done a couple, and I've said for years, I want to be able to sleep. I want, we had so many times where people around the world in other languages basically miss the basic understanding of what private keys are. And I couldn't really do anything about it with Litewallet because I'm like, I couldn't change the gamification part of it and everything like that. The only way to do it is to make it commercial so we can actually charge for these things. And so, I believed that if we could help people, this basic human notion where like, having things in your hand is really help. People really believe in that. When you talk about Bitcoin or Litecoin, it's off the rails. They don't really understand how to do it. So I feel like, and I've been educating people for so long, and I realize it's really tricky. You need to educate people just enough so that they feel they can grasp the concept before you go to the next level, right? So a lot of these crypto bros that we see, they've got really cool clothes and they're like, oh, you're gonna make all this money and everything, and I'm like, you're hurting everyone. You're hurting us. You're hurting the users because, like anything, if you learn how to write or if you learn how to ride a bike, first few times you had to, teach yourself. And I think with education with cryptocurrency and digital assets, you need to take the baby steps, and you need, hopefully a partner that can make that easy for you. And now that we've been doing this for like 8 years, I feel like I don't think there's too many other teams that do this sort of thing. So
Interesting. So, going back to your previous points on, we know that blockchain has been existed for so many years, but we also know that many users are still struggle with basic concepts like what you said, private keys, wallets, self-custody, and things like that.
right.
So, why do you think these concepts remain so difficult to understand for many people?
I think the first thing is no matter what country you're in, and we're in beautiful Jogja right now, Jogjakarta, we're it's a different concept if you go in England or in the US, but the reality is people, they know what banks are, they know how they're supposed to behave, right? And so people don't like the idea that someone holds your wealth and your value, but they accept it, right? And now when you take that component of the whole custody chain and say like, oh no, it's all yours. Please don't. Yeah, it's and that was my argument is always like, look, we do not have this stuff. Please write it down, right? So I think that's a thing that's universal, right? When we did this with Litewallet, we went from 11 languages to 14. Brainwallet, we have 20 languages, and the good thing, if it is a good thing, the challenge for human beings is getting that one part, which is like, we're not a bank.
Yeah,
you can't. People say, "Oh, you're your own bank." That's a double-edged sword, right? So we need to educate them about that stuff, and I feel like the more we educate people, we proved it with Litewallet, the easier it'll be for us, and more users.
So, based on your experience, what are the most common misconceptions about cryptocurrency, about digital wallet digital asset that you encounter, especially among new users?
Yeah, I think, well, there's a couple of big ones. One, they download crypto.com or CoinDesk and they say, oh, trading is free, right? That's the first thing they think. So that's really bad. Let me make sure I forget the other. I think the other thing is they just assume that, oh, you guys have a copy of my private key, and so I don't want to work with you guys because I know you're going to take my money, right? So those are the big ones, right? And so, before I went to business school, I educated myself. I read Ben Graham, Warren Buffett's letters, and just about value trading and how spreads and everything like that. And people don't know what a spread is, a buy sell price spread. Most people, I mean, for us, it's like, huh? But they don't understand. So when they see on their phone, oh, I just bought it, I didn't pay any fees, they don't understand they're overpaying for whatever the quantity that, right? So when we go to them and say like, oh, use Brainwallet, and when they send, we charge them a service fee, they're like, oh, it should be free because and we're like, no, like that service fee is what made a Litewallet profitable actually. And it's still very, very tiny. It's the same rate. I think the other thing is, and I've had a lot of people go into our our support channel and say like, how do I know you don't have my private keys? And, it's easy with Litewallet because we did it for so many years. We can say, well, we've been around for so long. Brainwallet is a little bit harder because we're relatively new. But the code is open source, right? And it would be a nightmare to our organization if we did have people's private information and their private keys, because then everyone will avoid us. So we need to establish trust, reliability. We spend actually a lot of our resources being available to people when they don't have answers.
Yeah. Now, for especially for students, what are the most important fundamentals that they should understand before they begin interacting with digital assets?
That's a good question. I think for students, who typically don't have a whole lot of money in the first place, right? It's ironic, but when I started really doing the business through Grunt Software, having a budget, a savings budget, does such a. It's one thing, your parents always say save your money, right? But the thing is with cryptocurrency, if you actually, buy and sit and put it in your treasury for a long period of time and you just keep doing it, that volatility actually helps you quite a bit, because when you do need to trade for some whatever service or whatever, which I did that a lot with Litewallet, and I was like, oh, this is great. So teaching people basic savings skills, that's fundamental, I think, especially students, right? So I have two students, 3 kids. And, I didn't learn my lesson when I was a kid, but I try to teach them and say like, hey, guys, try to manage your budget, set a budget, and then try to go under it and have some line item where you're always putting a little bit of money in there. We're very modest people, but it saved me so many times because I always did that. I built a little treasury with traditional assets and others, because when something happens, you're like, oh, okay, I've been doing this process. I think that's for students, it's really important. I think the other thing is, especially the energy that students have, and I don't know if I have an answer for this, but because there's so many new and exciting things showing up, they have the energy to go really do deep dives and stuff that might actually put them in the dark forest, right? Okay. And so I feel like if they can do the savings as a fundamental thing, then educating themselves a little bit about like what is blockchain. People still don't really understand what it is. And I try to say, well, it's a ledger. It's just, they're on computers and they're all checking everyone's homework every few minutes, right? It's very boring and simple, right? But people want to make all this money, so they're like, "Yeah, that's boring. How can I be how can I be really wealthy?" So
that's the problem, and also getting down the rabbit hole is very, very dangerous.
Yeah, quite. Yeah, especially we know the our big FANG folks are not only using AI, but everything they can to monetize their users. And it's frustrating for me. I'm kind of a product of Silicon Valley. I was there. I think I interviewed twice in YouTube and 3 times at Google. So I never wanted. Okay, I'll say this out. Hopefully nothing bad will happen. But I never wanted to work there because their mentality is different. I loved working at Apple. I thought that was the mentality is like people first, right? So in Apple, the thing I really loved is you'll have processes and the people will come up with the processes and they'll own that process. So whether it be so I worked in the movie industry, so I had to make sure that every piece got to production, right? And I was the one that owned it, right? Versus some of the other FANGs use algorithms to basically scale, but the problem is there's no person that owns that process, right? So if you apply that to a YouTube or ads or anything like that, there's no one checking to say hey, maybe we should tone this down a little bit because it's actually hurting people, right? This is the frustration that I have, right? I definitely don't want to participate in that.
So that's the dark side of banking.
I think so, yeah, and I think it's wonderful. So I've been back to Gadjah. This is my second time. I came last week working on these events, and I use social media a little bit, but I just didn't have time, and it was wonderful. Because I was my staff were telling me, oh, we need to do this, and I was like, okay, I'll take care of that. There was no distractions, right? It was just kind of I loved it, and I'll play chess every once in a while, but there's no algorithms on that. It's just people losing or winning. But it was really, really good. So I feel like if whoever can figure out a way to make it that people can access their social media without feeling like they're kind of like pushing the AI button, they'll be very wealthy.
Okay, let's talk a bit more on Brainwallet. You mentioned that Brainwallet aim to address the gap in crypto education landscape, particularly. But I was just curious, how does gamification change things, especially the way users engage with topics like private key, the topics that quite difficult to comprehend?
Yeah. So we're gonna do a few things. I think there will be different layers. So the first thing is most of the folks in my industry are very talented engineers, and so they think of the complexity. So when you talk about a game, they're thinking 3D. Only the best visuals. And I like to zag and say, like, actually, I see people everywhere playing Candy Crush, and it has not changed one bit, right? There's some fundamental thing that people love playing with it. And so I thought, using something a little bit low tech, but is fun, if we can just put some education into that was the idea behind this. Yeah.
So, how has the international receptions has been so far?
It's good. So, like I said, I'm so lucky. So, I speak a little bit of Indonesian. I've been to the country many times. I think this is like a treasure for us because last year we went to CoinFest, and even though there's a lot of notion that digital assets and the government doesn't like it, but the public want to know, right? And we saw that in CoinFest. And I think a lot of people don't realize that Indonesia is the fourth largest country in the world, right? So you've got fourth largest country in the world, a populace of people that want to learn, right? And it's phenomenal. So what I basically decided, we have 20 languages, but we don't have the budget to market to the U.S. U.S. is always the biggest market, right? So we said we can probably do better by learning our formula to talk to the right people and getting the right people in Indonesia, right? And educate folks there, and then build a really good strategy for other markets. So I would say, because we've been here, because we've been doing our marketing, Indonesia's jumped up quite a bit, right? Because we've been talking to students, we've been talking to regular folks. They're asking the great questions, right? That you typically don't have that in the U.S., right? Usually people are very skeptical, and you don't see them face to face, right? And I really believe in actually meeting people. If I'm saying that I prove that, like, hey, you can trust that we're going to educate you. If I try to do this, behind an online wall, that's not good, right? So I think Indonesia, it's done really well. I want to say like a 20% uptick from the last few weeks. So it's like something's right, and the idea is we want to apply that to other markets. So I'd say the other markets, unfortunately, typically, again, using my business degree, is I see currencies that are having some issues, whatever reason. So like Turkey, Ukraine, Russia, right? So we added those languages, and the hope is once we kind of polish this strategy, we want to just apply it to those regions. And so we have staff in the team that actually have cultural backgrounds in those spaces as well.
So different, I suppose different countries will have different strategies, different types.
Yeah, for sure. And it's funny, I've also had my own education of like playing with GoPay, DanaPay, Kudis, and all this stuff. Like it's one thing to look at online and to read a news article about it. It's a different thing when you're actually trying to pay, right? And because I've been to Indonesia so many times, and I remember like oh, they give you so much paper and there's so much, you have cash. And as Americans, we're like freaking out all those zeros, like it a lot. So I'm like, oh, but one of the things I said in my talk is like, you guys like are experts about this, right? You have to understand what GoPay is. You have to understand, like, if you go to the market, like markets in Europe, in Indonesia are the same. You go there and you buy some eggs, and you look at the price and you figure that out. The U.S. is not like that, right? In fact, it's kind of like you get in a car, you drive 20 minutes, and you get in, the price is basically the same. The quality has nothing to do with anything. So you don't have that nice ground level concept of what's actually going on versus here, right? Or in England, right? So, yeah, I would just say that I feel like many of the countries that have currencies that are really being challenged right now will always look to them because they need something like a SPV wallet anyway, right? And they like it. And we see that when things are going on, we see they pop up. So like I said, it's usually the US, Russia, Ukraine, Turkey, Venezuela. Yeah, I mean, you can understand why.
Yeah, exactly. So, looking ahead, how do you see blockchain technology evolving for everyday use cases, especially in emerging countries like Indonesia?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really sure, but I think people, I want to say 4 or 5 years ago, people didn't believe that Bitcoin was a real thing, right? If you remember, people are like, oh, the price is going up, but they're gonna rug pull and everything like that. And even though that happened with other coins, but Bitcoin now has this a really traditional asset class moniker to it now, right? So now I think what I see the questions are like, oh, what if all the Bitcoins are mine? What's going to happen there, right? And I don't, I hope I'm around that. I don't know, but like, there's still that big question where people are like, oh, okay, if there's no more coins, what happens? But the reality is, your behavior as a consumer, right? You need to. I feel like you need to understand that first before you ask all the big blockchain questions. And I think through educating people, then people are going to be like, oh, I know that Litecoin works well. I know Bitcoin works well. I know I can send quite well, right? So the next stage is kind of like, I don't know. I mean, maybe there's another, it's a good question. Unfortunately, I don't really have a great answer on that, but I feel like people are taking note that Bitcoin is actually a real thing, and if people start realizing that the banks, we see this other thing, the banks are actually defining as an asset class, and they're actually trying to treasure Bitcoin. So
interesting. Now, not only big banks, central banks, but also investment funds and things like that are now trying to put some Bitcoins as their
yeah, why not? I mean, yeah. This is the other thing, and we know what the LIBOR is. You and I, we know what it is, but people don't understand that. If you said to average people, "Hey, wouldn't it be great if there's something where instead of inflation rates being completely volatile based on the political party in your country, you just looked it up and it was set by someone and you don't know who that person is, right?" And they'll be like, yeah, that'd be awesome. Yeah, that's called Bitcoin. They don't understand that the inflation rate is set and it's part of the protocol. Like they're starting to realize, like, oh, this is a real thing. I'm like, yeah, and so now if the country is having issues politically, the exchange rate is also the monetary policy should not affect day-to-day people, right? It should be fine. And that's the thing. I think Litecoin has this benefit where if you call it this, and a lot of people don't like Litecoin because the price doesn't do these big swings, right? And I say, yeah, but that means it's a really good currency, right? Because you don't have to worry from day to day how much to change. You're going to get a little bit of a change, but I mean, I've been using it for a long time, and it's really, really nice because you're like, okay, it's, bad things may happen, but the more you can bank, the more you can easily make a decision instead of being emotional about it. Yeah,
less volatile.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, for students, especially here at FEB UGM, or young people interested in technology, where do you think the biggest opportunities lie? As a developer or as a professional in this field, maybe?
I think, so again, I'm very jealous of the Kurdish thing, and I know the government, kind of forced it on folks. But we always, the notion before we decided to come here was like, hey, can we find some small warungs or like small shops in the area to accept Litecoin, right? Yeah. This is like everyone has a problem with it for whatever reason around the world. I think understanding the boring crypto as a student is way more valuable than it's like, oh, you're going to be a influencer for this new crypto, because we kind of know the chances of that going wrong is kind of high, right? So I think students, and I know it's difficult for them, but it's good to have students to look at the really old, boring stuff and see how it's being applied, right? And before you know it, it's going to be, boring for everyone. And they go from being students to parents and workers and all that kind of stuff.
So basically, you suggest students to understand the core technology first, the fundamental mechanism and things like that, and then see the opportunity.
Yeah, I think there's plenty of ways. If you understand how it works, then you can obviously see like, oh, you can do this sort of thing. So I had one thought about this, but I feel like so one of the things that we get the benefit of is, and we're going to start talking more about this, which is Litecoin is so much like Bitcoin. If you understand how to use it in Brainwallet, so we're going to have tutorials and stuff like that, then you understand Bitcoin, right? And that's a powerful message to people, right? Everyone wants. I had a couple of family members tell me recently, like, yeah, you told me to get Bitcoin like 10 years ago, but I didn't listen. I'm like, what are you going to, but the point is like, it's not too late, right? And you don't have to put all of your assets into one class, but why not just educate yourself a little bit? And I usually do not promote anything. I say like, hey, this is a thing if you want to know, because I don't want to be responsible for someone going crazy, with leverage or something like that. I just like, hey, I'm definitely your digital asset Sherpa. If you have any questions, I can answer them for you,
The thing is that you are now currently visiting Indonesia, and especially Yogyakarta and other cities as well. So from your interactions with users and things like that so far, what have you learned from Indonesian users or local communities about how they approach blockchain, how they approach crypto and digital assets in particular?
Yeah, again, like I said, it's really refreshing because we did Q&A sessions at UGM and at Omnicom, and they're the same questions as the folks that claim to be really experts, right? So I think the fact that they showed up is a big deal. Yeah, okay, yeah, we're gonna have a little thing. You're gonna get a lunch, but I think that's pretty normal everywhere you go. That's not. I think people are excited that we respect the Indonesian culture and what we can actually learn from it, and I think people like that we did this, and so I feel like there's a skepticism that's a very healthy skepticism that we found, but I don't know. I think the conversation with them has just begun, and I feel like I said, we actually have team members here in Jogja. I love Jogja. I've said this and I'd never been here before. I've been in Jakarta so many times, and I've been in many traffic jams, many, and I just thought, I was educated about the fact that like not only is UGM a prestigious university, but there's so many other universities here, and the scale of going from A to B. This changes culture in most big Asian cities. Like the traffic is so much, you basically can't do certain things, right? And Jogja, maybe I shouldn't say it too loud, but I say the traffic here is cute. So that's a great thing. And then, we've already worked with you and other folks on UGM's campus. So it's like, what we want to do is once we get these numbers up, we want to have real live events here, right, on a more regular basis. Because, like I said, I'm from California, but Silicon Valley, like you can't even wave a stick at the prices, right? Yeah. And so that means automatically you're not going to be able to even open the door, right? So that means like Singapore, I lived in Singapore before, it's very expensive. I was looking at KL and other places. We may be able to do that, but right now, because I've got educated folks asking the tough questions, asking the right smart questions, they're happy to have us, right? Like it's a triple threat. It's like, wow, they want us to be here, and they're helping us educate, and they know about digital assets more than your average global user. So it's like, it's really good, yeah.
So, earlier I asked you what students should prioritize if they want to learn something like crypto or blockchain. But on the other hand, what behaviors or what mistakes that they should actively avoid? You mentioned about healthy skepticism, but you may have another things to say.
Yeah, so I don't have any proof, but I feel one of the pieces of leverage that a lot of these exchanges use is that people are used to using it, the stuff on their phone, right? And so it's basically it's a nice serotonin device for them, and so they combine that with these exchange accounts that they have. And I think any way you can avoid doing any kind of financial transactions there where you can easily be kind of manipulated emotionally, that's good. We've heard horror stories where people really went over the top. Yeah. So and usually it's because people's prefrontal cortex is just not well developed, right?
That's
and
dangerous.
So, yeah, and so like, hey, like I'm like I like sepak bola or soccer, and I was when I was a young lieutenant, I always did stuff where I was working with people, or with soccer, I was working with people, interacting with them, and it requires a lot of time and effort, and you can't do that with a phone in your face, right? So I think young folks, it seems really boring and probably mundane, but young folks should do in group activity where they actually go and have to talk face to face, and because COVID kind of hit everyone, right? So the idea of them working with teams and learning to do that is a very healthy thing. We're humans. This is how we operate. So the more they can do that, I think when they look at crypto, it will be a different beast entirely, because they're like, oh, I have my friends and they're saying this, but like someone on YouTube said I should buy this thing, but my friend is like, I trust that person, right? We know that YouTube uses these influencers to get people excited about something that's probably not healthy for them. And the only way you can kind of override that is by having a real life experience with folks that you know and care about, or not, but just people that you interact on a regular basis, like not on your phone necessarily. So I think that's definitely a big deal, even though I'm a mobile app developer.
But still, it is best to have some sort of close-knit community
Oh
where
yeah.
people meet regularly and things like that.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like like I said, I coached soccer, and I always liked doing. I coached little 4 or 5 year old kids all the way up to high school, and it just I even wrote apps for it, but it was just to make sure I could call the parents because the kids were so young. It was really basic stuff, but the point is like. I still have friends that I was in a French soccer club, Les Petits Bleus, for this. I mean, all of our kids are grown, but I just saw them a couple of years ago. So it's like, that's more important than any new app, right?
Yeah.
Or any new digital
Correct.
asset.
And in your opinion, Jogja is the best place to have a community, to work together, to do something.
Yeah, I think I'm learning a little bit Japanese culture. There's fundamental differences, but I think the thing is like the pace of living here is really cool. I like it, but also you guys value education as well. So, I've been on the campus. I've been on 3 campuses actually. So Sunday I went to a Google developers group. And I shouldn't be shocked because there's so many universities in Jogja, but I was like, oh, okay, this is kind of like, this is where students in Indonesia go to school and they'll find the university that works for them,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's great for that. I really hope that I can go back and have a vacation here.
You're more than welcome.
Thank you.
So finally, how can students start building a kind of responsible and sustainable career in blockchain or in digital asset industries?
I think one of the things that you and I we did our business work, and I think there's a lot to be said about understanding fundamentals about traditional assets.
Uh-huh.
Really, so before I went to business school, I was educating myself about trading stock and saving and everything like that. I don't think that's going to go away anytime soon. And I think the younger the younger a student or a young person decides to start saving money and really investing in blue chips, right? And with a yield, right? And like where they can go to sleep, right? So you bought some stock. Okay, now go do something else. Don't look at your screen every 5 minutes. Like having that habit is really, really healthy. I think, especially in a place like this where you've got a lot of people, they're going to hear all these digital asset things. And like, I would love for us to be the voice to be like, hey guys, don't forget to do this thing. And the candy is going to be the game, right?
Yes.
At the end of the day, they're playing a game, but like they're really actually securing their knowledge of what's going on with tutorials and all that stuff. I think it's, hopefully it's going to be a big thing very soon.
So I think we are coming to the end of the session, but before we close, do you have any final thoughts or final comments for our audience, especially young people who are curious about these things?
Yeah, I feel like one of the things that I've said to a lot of the younger folks here, because I am an engineer by like I got a degree in engineering, but the software thing, I write a lot of software, and that was always a hobby for me since I was 12, right? And I never valued it that much because I was like, oh yeah, I can write software, and not realizing that can actually like pay the bills, right?
Yes.
So I think for young folks, they think, I remember, oh, I'm gonna do this thing, and I'm gonna be in this job, and it's not quite like that. I think it's important for them to work and prove that they can actually complete something, but also there's going to be some passion that they're going to like, and just do it for the sake of doing it, right? So like playing guitar or playing soccer, if you can figure out a way to do that long term, eventually I think it could be something that could be lucrative for you, but not saying, oh, I'm never going to play guitar anymore because I'm going to be a lawyer is kind of, this is kind of a classic trope, right? Yes. But I really believe that your soul needs to be fed something, more than just, the grades or the money. It needs to be like, oh, this makes me happy, spending time with people, or, it could be playing darts. I don't know. But the point is, don't minimize that. I should have really taken it seriously when I was younger, and I put it on the shelf, and it was funny. So like I said, I've been really busy, and I went to the developers conference, and one of our colleagues was speaking, and I was so tired, and he was doing a workshop where he was building an Android app, and I was like, I'm just gonna watch. And I was like, okay, well, I guess I'll get the Wi-Fi. And then I opened the Android, and then I'm coding. I'm like, oh yeah, this is the fun thing. So before I do, I was like, oh yeah, I'm doing the thing, and I forgot, like, oh yeah, I like this stuff. I've been so tired, right? Right. So for people that don't write software, they think, oh, it's so hard. It's like, no, actually, we like the software stuff. The thing we don't like is like when there's no direction, or we spend too much on the wrong thing, right? So, and I love on my team, I've got folks that I'm very lucky. They're really good in their jobs, and they're all fractional, right? But my software folks, they love one of the games. Charlie, he's like, oh, I was going to put audio in there. I didn't like it. So here's, he did a beautiful game, but it's like, oh, it doesn't have the audio. But I'm like, hey, I'm not upset. You built it, right? So I think working on something that you're really passionate about, and keep going about it, not with the thinking of like, oh, I'm gonna be a millionaire, but just working on it. It's going to make you feel happy on the inside, right? And we're human beings at the end of the day, right? So I think young folks need to remember that.
Yeah, I think we all have been guilty of that. I myself, if I can turn back time, I think I want to try do more things just for its own sake, without thinking too much.
Yeah.
Just be passionate about anything.
Yeah.
Without thinking about money, fame, or things like that.
Just for the sake of doing it. And I tell my kids all the time, like, guys, like, just work on stuff that you like, that you just enjoy doing, right? Because no one's going to stop you if you really like doing it, right? And that's actually the key to being an expert, right? No one's going to stop you, because it's just they can't keep up with you. So
especially for young students, because they have so many time, energy, and room for error as well, not like us adults.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything that you want to talk to us about?
I want to thank you again for having us, and actually helping me guide me and the team to make sure that we're doing everything. We didn't have a lot of time, so thank you, Dr. Iman. I would also say that coming to Indonesia with the notion of doing that, we didn't know it was going to be 100% that was going to happen. But I did have some really good mentors in England. So I work with Nottingham Trent University. They have a venture builder there, and Connor Morrison. We chatted about how we do this, and he said, "Yeah, if you find someone that really knows what's going on, that can kind of guide you." You and other people, but so I just want to shout out them, and they actually. Hopefully we can do some more work. I also, the dean of the business school is actually, she's from Indonesia, but she's the University of Surrey. And I said, I'm going to mention you guys because they didn't know me. I said, hey, I want to do my thing there. And I also have an incubator that I work with in Norwich, in a small town. So they're called Accela Partners. So I definitely want to mention them. Because when you're in the middle of nowhere and you don't know what's going on, and culturally, even though we speak the same language, so to speak, I have a lot of learning to do in England, right? And so I want to thank them for kind of giving me ideas and stuff like that, and opening the door for me. And again, thank you for
Thank you
having
very
me.
much. Thank you very much, Mr. Kerry, for
Thank you.
sharing
Thank
your insight and experience with us today.
Thank
This
you.
has been very awesome.
Yeah, thank
Hopefully
you.
you can go back to Indonesia, to Yogyakarta, especially to talk to us about more deeply about this
I want
kind
to
of
see
things.
Borobudur. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and thank you everyone has been listening. This episode is part of FEB UKM's commitment to public education, especially on financial technology, blockchain, and digital transformation. And if you find this discussion useful, please don't forget to follow FEB UKM's official channels for more educational content. I'm your host, and we will see you in the next episode of the FEB UKM podcast. Bye.
Thank you.